Today is just Women's Day. No. I take the name like away. You wouldn't do that. You could imagine what I could say to him. Yeah.
It's crazy. Lemonade, but no decaf. I have an improvement for next time. Maybe we put
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, actually. Actually, I think I can do that now. I'm gonna put them at least there because it is very distracting when I was.
Would you like me to share it right now?
Just give, that'd be great. Just give me 1 second though, please. I'm gonna put these.
We're sitting next to each other.
So nice.
Rock out.
Thank you.
Yeah, then maybe we can figure out this situation is.
One of the chairs.
No, you don't have to do that. That's very simple. We're gonna figure out a system for this,
So
but.
it's not as disruptive.
But I'm gonna move down these over here.
That's what I was saying, I walk in town, it's fine.
Take them and then this is.
It could take me 2 seconds.
You know, we could alphabetize it together.
Yeah, but I don't want you to have to do that now.
Every week we do the same.
I don't wanna waste time. I want
And
Raquel gets to be able to start and I'm gonna move these over.
Yeah, it's fine.
There's a teacher in me.
Yeah.
At a workshop leader.
Thank you, sir.
Of course. Me too.
Still not here.
Teacher, you be a workshop leader.
Right.
Another like, okay.
All right, we're gonna get started. We're gonna get started in just a minute. Okay, so before I turn the class over to Raquel, I just wanted for everyone to have access. We are starting a new email marketing situation so that I can make sure that all of you who are enjoy our learning opportunities receive targeted emails about the upcoming adult learning programming. So if you have your phones, take your phones out. This is a great opportunity to make sure that they're silenced. And then turn on your cameras and scan this QR code, like hold it up to the QR. And a little yellow thing is gonna come up, zoom into, there it is. See that little yellow, press the little yellow thing that comes up.
Where do you?
Like, just press it.
Camera?
Yeah, okay,
I get that close.
good, press that. It's there,
Yeah.
okay, and what you're gonna do,
Do I hit it?
yeah, press the little yellow button, the yellow that comes up, that little yellow thing.
This one?
Yep, okay, and then you're just gonna leave that next to you, and at the end of the class, you're gonna fill out that form that comes up electronically. We're not gonna do it now, because I don't wanna interrupt Rachel's time, but you're gonna hold that, and at the end of class, you're gonna enter your information onto that form, so that I have your emails and contact information, so that I can send you all of the amazing upcoming adult learning programming specifically, okay? That's all I wanted to do. Thank you.
Here today.
I know, but I'm gonna do this every time we have a session.
So next month, this really looks interesting.
It's so many good things, and I'm gonna share with you at the end of the class. Okay, thank you, Ron. You can stop share. And at the end of the class, I'll ask that you put that back up.
Would
And
you
if
like
you
me
could
to
also-
put it in the chat as well?
That would be great if you could put it in the chat. So for those of you who don't worry if you missed the QR, Ron will put the link in the chat. You can click it and it'll come up on your computer. And without further ado, our Moa, Rachel, thank you.
Shalom, everybody. Good to see you. I understand it's good morning still for you, and it's well into good evening for me. You may remember that in the previous 2 classes, because this is session number 3 out of a 4-session series that we are having to look at poetry written in Israel since October 7th. You may recall that in the previous 2 weeks, I was willing to stay beyond the hour, and it's never a problem for me. But today I'll ask your indulgence, and I'll want to conclude the session close to the hour, or just a minute or two after, because you may know from the news that fighting had restarted in Israel. Many of us are not pleased with that, and there are major demonstrations going on, and I would like to be present. I have been present in all those opportunities to express our opinions, and I want to be there. So it starts at 7:30. So Yossi, my husband, is going to be ready with the car and everything so that we can leave immediately when I'm done. It, Before I start, it is always my custom, my minhag, as we say in Hebrew, to check with you if there is what I call any lingering business, an insight that you had since last week, a question that came up. Maybe some of you got a copy of the book and you looked at another poem and you're curious. Anything that came up since last week, I am willing to entertain for a couple of minutes right now. So just let me know if you are at home by raising your hand. Yeah. If you are in the room, then the rabbi can maybe indicate to me if there is anything.
Clear or something, I don't know, loud or clear, I mean, or just at her face, because I'm having a hard time getting the details of what you're saying.
I think this is at the highest volume. This is at the highest volume. I'm sorry.
You can hear me well?
You want to sit there and then you'll be able to see. I think we're good in the room. Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you just need to tell me. I can up it.
Okay, great. So it's not, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So no questions, no insights. So why don't we get started? Let me put on the screen our PowerPoint for today, and it will be our lead and our guide into this session today. So give me just a minute there, and I want to go back to my opening one. So we are still with Beth El. As you can see, we haven't changed shul, which is good. And this is session number 3, Poems in the Wake of October 7th, with an additional title or subtitle. And this time it says, In Conversation with Sacred Texts. You can see images and pictures of our poets. I invited Rachel Sharansky-Danziger to join us, but she, like me, is preferring to attend a demonstration in Jerusalem where she lives. I'll be going to the Tel Aviv one, as she is one of the speakers in the demonstration in Jerusalem, so she cannot be late. Therefore, she called me this morning, and I totally understood that. I want to say a word about our subtitle, A Conversation with Sacred Text. The poets that I have chosen to include in this session, all of them write in the wake of October 7th, but their poetry is making allusions to biblical references. You may think that this is something outstanding, but it is not. Throughout the ages, times immemorial, all the way to last week, Israeli poetry is oftentimes relying heavily on metaphors from biblical texts, from prayer, from Talmud, and other Jewish sources. And one not knowledgeable of Jewish societies worldwide, and in particular in Israel, may think that the ability, the need, the desire to include biblical references in a modern poetry have something to do with the religiosity of the writer. So let me tell you that it does not. In Israel, fluency in biblical lore, both on the writer's side and on the reader's side, has nothing to do with your level of religiosity. This happens because Hebrew Bible, is taught in our public schools starting on 2nd grade and going all the way to the 12th grade of high school. We study it as poetry, we study it as history, and it happens in all our secular school as well, of course, as at the more religious schools. Not often is everybody familiar in depth with levels of responsa and levels of reference and what Rashi has to say and what the Maimonides has to say, but the plain text, the biblical story, we are all familiar with. This is why poets, as I've said, from time immemorial, have the leisure, the fluency to know that their readers will understand if they make a biblical reference. So now let me step out because I need to run this classical quiz that I always run when I start discussing modern Israeli poetry in conversation with sacred text. From your knowledge, you don't need to be an expert, just from your knowledge of biblical lore and biblical stories, which one of the many biblical stories, starting with creation all the way to the prophets, which of the biblical stories would be the one most often addressed by modern Israeli poets? Which is the biblical story that appears most frequently in modern Israeli poetry? What do you think?
Bereshit.
I continue collecting, so I have Bereshit. Go next. Anybody else?
Binding of Isaac.
Yeah, Steve, but that's not fair. You've been with me for quite a few years now. Yeah, anybody else? Okay, the answer is simple. Steve is right. The biblical story that is oftentimes addressed in modern Israeli poetry is the binding of Isaac. So here is a situation. When I ask this question with an Israeli audience, they will look at me as if I am an idiot or something and said, what do you mean, which? Isn't it clear that it's the binding of Isaac? And when I ask it at a non-Israeli, still Jewish audience, I will get Joseph and Genesis and creation and Exodus and what have you. Very rarely the binding of Isaac. So now the question arises, why? Why is the binding of Isaac the biblical event most frequently addressed in modern Israeli poetry? How come that is the case?
Sorry. Oh, and then she.
I would say, isn't it because you're as an Israeli citizen or as a country, you are asked to basically sacrifice your young children or your younger generation. And,
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
it.
You're absolutely right. Because in Israeli reality, since the day it was created and even before, the need to sacrifice our young generation and oftentimes not so young generation in ongoing wars had never stopped. The recent sacrifice of a metaphorical Isaac may happen right as we are talking, because fighting had resumed as of this morning. So when Israeli poets address themselves to biblical metaphors, they are doing it within a context that totally understands that and totally welcomes it. Now, as we go back to our PowerPoint presentation for the day, and as in previous sessions, we will not necessarily really do all of them, but the poems are accessible to you. You can see that I have planned to include 6 poems. We'll be lucky if we'll do 3 or 4, we will see. But anyway, all the poets that appear here, and you can see their pictures, you can see that they are relatively and not so relatively very young people. They are all active, they are all writing, and a few of them do not even consider themselves to be poets. They are, let me see, Racheli Moskovich is a person who does theater. She's a director of theater. Rachel Sharansky Danziger is a teacher. Osnat Eldar, whose name is missing there, is a Reform rabbi. Lital Kaplan is a psychologist, and I could go on and on and on. Let me start with the first one, and that will be a poem by Tzur Goeta, one of my, no, I shouldn't say that. I like many of them. I shouldn't say it's one of my favorites. It is. It doesn't matter. The important thing maybe that I want to mention about our poet here, Tzur Goeta, is that he is the youngest of all the poets in the anthology. And he published so far, I think, one book of poetry. And I'm going to read. You can hear that I got a cold and a little bit of a coughing, so bear with me when I am taking care of that. Hebrew first, then the English one, a little bit of discussion. חושך על פני תהום. המורה מיכל שאלה אותנו, מי כאן יודע לומר לי מה פירוש הפסוק, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום. כל השנים האלה מאז ועד היום, הדהדה אותה שאלה בתוכי. הדהדו בי עיני המורה המחפשות אצבע מונפת. הדהדה בי אותה השתיקה הגורפת. ב7 באוקטובר, הדהד צלצול הטלפון בביתה הדומם של המורה מיכל. זה אני, אמרתי, הנה התוהו ובוהו, הנה החושך, הנה התהום, שלום. Darkness over the surface of the abyss. My teacher Michal once asked us, who can tell me the meaning of the verse, the earth was chaos and confusion with darkness over the surface of the abyss? All these years since then, to this very day, that question had echoed within me. The teacher's eyes, as she was looking for a raised hand, echoed in me. That all-encompassing silence echoed in me. On October 7th, the ringing telephone echoed in the silent home of my teacher, Michal. It's me, I said. Here is your chaos and confusion. Here is your darkness. Here is your abyss. Goodbye. I'd like to start discussing the poem from the very end with an issue of translation. You can see that the Hebrew original ends with the word shalom, which indeed is goodbye, also hello. But the word shalom in itself has a literal meaning, and it means peace. Which way would you have translated? Here is your darkness, here is your abyss, peace? Or here is your darkness, here is your abyss, goodbye. Just hold the two options. We have opted for goodbye, but I want you to be aware of the other option. As I'm taking you back to the beginning, I'd like you to pay attention to an interesting writing phenomenon. Oftentimes, poets assume a certain speaking voice, a certain persona in the poem, and in some other places, the poets lend their voice to another person. Like if you remember the poem Mom is Always Right, the poet was not speaking for himself, he had put the poem in the mouth of a child. In this case, we have something even more complicated, as there are many voices. So listen carefully and count them with me. The first line, my teacher Michal once asked us. So here is the poet recollecting childhood days back in school and sharing the memory. I can tell you the Genesis we start teaching to our kids in 2nd grade. So he must have been 7 or something. All right? And he recalls, my teacher Michal once asked us, that's the poet, or the poet remembering his childhood. As we switch to the second line, the voice changes. He is now quoting the teacher. Who can tell me the meaning of the verse? The adult, remembering the child, is imitating the teacher, maybe even in tone. You know how teachers ask a question in front of the class. Who of you can tell me? As we move to the next line, the speaking voice shifts again. Now it's a biblical quote. Now it's God talking. The earth was chaos and confusion with darkness over the surface of the abyss. So look at your first verse and try listening to the three voices. Poet, remembering teacher, quoting Bible. Back to the poet. All these years since then to this very day, that question had echoed within me. He's now playing with another voice, an echo of the question. The teacher's eyes, as she was looking for a raised hand, echoed in me. Now it's the eyes that echo. I don't know that eyes can echo, but in the poem they may. That all-encompassing silence. There was no answer. Come on, 7-year-old, do they really understand the surface and the abyss and the darkness? They don't, so there was silence, and the teacher was disappointed, probably. And now we come to now. On October 7th, a ringing telephone echoed in the silent home of my teachers, Michal. Now there is the sound of a telephone and the even harsher sound of silence in the home of teacher Michal. And then the poet resumes again his voice. It's me, I said. I finally understand. Here is your chaos and confusion. Here is your darkness. Here is your abyss. Goodbye. So, first of all, Tzorgueta, our poet, marks October 7th and whatever happened on that day as a division point, as a point of insight, as a point of clarity. I never understood what tohu vavohu and confusion and darkness was. Now I do. Now I experienced it. October 7th was such a watershed event. I get it. But the question that will remain now unanswered, and you may want to address it if you think you can, why is the telephone in Michal's home not answered? What is happening to teacher Michal? Why is she not answering her phone? Does she live in the Gaza envelope? Is one of her children now trying to escape from the Nova Festival place? Is she getting her husband ready to go on reserve duty? Who knows? Was she hit? Was she herself abducted? We don't know. Silence. But with silence comes an opening and insight. I finally understand the total confusion of your world, the total inability to see order or something in it. Goodbye, Mora Michal. I finally have the answer to your question that echoed for me in all these years. Let me check with you if any of you would like to react to this poem or ask me something about it. Yes, please go ahead.
This is Rashina. Hi.
Yeah.
I just wanted what struck me as being a meaningful use of the verb echo, given the tunnels and just sort of the underground life post October 7th. It's a verb that reverberates.
Yeah,
So
I
there's-
totally agree with you. Do you have Hebrew?
I don't, I would love Hebrew.
Okay, so let me do this for you because the word to echo in Hebrew is what we call an onomatopoeic word. Like the sound of the word creates its meaning. So let me tell it to you in Hebrew. Mehadhed. Mehadhed. You hear the double, the repetition. Mehadhed. An echo is head, and to echo the mehadhed. So thank you for that comment. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Let me know if you see a hand raised that I am missing. I would like to be made aware of that. And if not, we will go to the next one. Okay, so I think we are good to continue. And here is our next poem. And you can see that I started as I think is appropriate to start with Genesis, with the creation of the world. And now we are moving into a totally different biblical allusion that we will see. I want to ask if the name Rachel Sharansky Danziger, especially the Sharansky part, if that echoes with any of you.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel Sharansky Danziger is the daughter of Anatoly Sharansky. Yeah, she is. And she is an amazing woman, and she was supposed to be with us today, and she is elsewhere where she feels that her obligation to speak up for the hostages, to speak up for a better solution of the situation is calling her. When we finish discussing this, I will tell you a small anecdote of I knew Rachel from before, and we worked at the same place for a while. So I had her contact information and I could reach her poem easily, unlike Avital that I spent a long time locating. ביום. ביום אפשר לאפות עוגיות לנשות המילואימניקים. ביום אפשר לשלוח הודעות מחזקות לחברים. ביום אפשר לנחם אבלים. ביום אפשר להשקיע בחיים. אבל בשעות הלילה אין איך להשתיק את המתים. אני שוכבת וליבי ער ודוהר, רודף אחרי שברי סיפורים שסופם כבר ידוע, והכל, הכל מרגיש פצוע, פגוע, ואיך אפשר לישון ואיך אפשר לשקוט כשאיבדנו לנצח יותר מ1,000 לבבות. By day, one can bake cookies for the wives of the reservists. By day, one can send strengthening messages to friends. By day, one can comfort mourners. By day, one can invest in life. And you can hear how this opening part of the poem is indeed creating a rhythm, creating a sound, the words itself, bayom, 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 or by day, we were lucky for such a close translation, even by sound. And it lists a few of those things that you frantically do during the day just to keep yourself busy, just to feel that you are contributing somehow, just to make sure that you do what needs to be done. So that's the first part. This is how we are led into the poem. And then there is a shift, and the shift is indicated with the word but, aval, and you know that there'll be a shift. But at night, there is no way to silence the dead. And I know that you want me to continue reading because it's seemingly one understands this line. And then I'd like you to stop and think again. What do you mean there is no way to silence the dead? One of the better known qualities of dead people is that they are silent. Is that not a fact?
Sorry, we have one question here.
I'm looking at, I don't speak Hebrew, but so I'm looking at aval v'sho'ot. Isn't that like hashoah? Is that the same root? I don't know.
No, no.
Okay.
Yitzhak and Shoah is not the same. Totally not the same. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Did I don't, I'm only listening. I'm not.
I understand that, and it's okay to ask, and this is what I'm here for. But it's not like Shoah. I'll show you other sound effects here, okay? For example, the bayom is a very strong one. But so we are back to that line opening the second part of the poem. There is no way to silence the dead, and you know that the poet is sort of misleading you. Like, what do you mean silence the dead? The dead are silent. No, they are not. They are echoing in your mind. So we have moved into a night session in which one is alone and everything that is happening in your head. It's not really happening like the day situation where you can bake and sand and cook and do and this and that. Now you're all on your own. But at night there is no way to silence the dead. I lie down and my heart is awake. Look at the word heart, live. That will lead us to the end of the poem. Awake and galloping, chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known, and everything hurts and feels wounded, injured, damaged. And how can one sleep and how can one be tranquil when we have lost for all eternity more than 1,000 hearts? So first of all, your heart is awake, but it somehow is holding the 1,000. And by this, I can show you one of the examples where the poem itself is dating itself. Because now that we know that they are closer to 2,000 dead. But when the poem is written, in one of the earlier days, we don't know the numbers yet. They're still counting, they're still identifying, they're still not sure. So the poem actually is also a dating mechanism. This was very early, the first week, maybe the first 10 days. We know different now. Let's go back again to the line. But at night there is no way to silence the dead. I lie down and my heart is awake. This is your clear first, not only biblical allusion to the Song of Songs, chapter 5. Ani yeshena v'libi er. I was asleep, but my heart was wakeful. And look at what our poet is doing. She doesn't say, I am asleep. She says, I lie down. She indicates that she cannot sleep. She's using the biblical quote in a not correct way, just like you can not silence the dead. You are quoting now Torah, you are quoting the Song of Songs wrongly. In the Song of Songs, the person, the narrator, is asleep with a wakeful heart, and she cannot sleep. She's awake, she's lying down, but her heart is still galloping. Vedoher, it's like going on, and it's not stopping. And then something different is happening. Chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known. In the Song of Songs, indeed, following this quote, there is a whole story of the lover chasing the beloved. But this time you are chasing ends of stories that are told on the radio or on other media. You have heard them already on the midday news, and you had heard another version at the end of the day, and you know already that how it will end, and your heart is broken, and you cannot stop listening. And then there is something even more interesting for me, and I'll need to take you to the Hebrew. and everything hurts and feels wounded. Let me show you something. I want to take you to the blessing called Ve'ahavta. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. In the poem, the all is translated into everything, but it echoes the hakol, 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 echoes Ve'ahavta that follows the Shema in the morning. It's not only her night that will be ruined, it's her ability to say the prayer. Because you are supposed to love God with all, and you cannot, because everything hurts and feels wounded, injured, damaged. And how can one sleep? And how can one be tranquil when we have lost for all eternity, by now one should say almost 2,000 hearts? So here is a poem that is making two very subtle biblical allusions, one to the Song of Songs, the other to Torah. And again, the readers will recognize, especially in Rachel's circles, she's an Orthodox woman, those people will recite Ve'ahavta daily, so they immediately will pick up on it. In all circles, you would know the Song of Songs. Even the line, I am asleep and my heart is awake, was set to music. It's a song in Israel, so it's very recognizable. And now the story that I promised you. So, as I told you, Rachel and I sort of knew each other. We cannot say that we were friends, but we were aware of each other at that place, Pardes Institute, where we worked together. And so I was her Facebook friend as well. And I saw the poem pretty early. I think I was still in Budapest, as I have told you before I came home. And so I have her contact information, and I'm writing to her immediately. Do I have your permission to use your poem in my teaching? Do I have the permission to have it translated into English so I can teach? And she gets back to me and says, what poem? And I say, the one you posted on Facebook this morning. And she said, it's not a poem, it's just a Facebook post. And I said, Rachel, let me show you, if you have the time and energy, how it is a poem. And let me tell you that Rachel and a couple of her friends have also edited and published a book of women's prayers written after October 7th. The title of the book is As Nashir, We Will Yet Sing Your Praise, As Nashir. And she and I have done a launching together, me of the Shiva collection and she of As Nashir. And a part of the program was that I showed her and everybody else how her poem indeed was a poem. So let me suggest that we will do one more, and then I will open it up again for conversation and questions, unless there is something urgent. Rabbi, if you see somebody that is like urgently needs to address us, then I will of course stop. And if not that, let me take you, after the opening two poems, one may need something a little bit more hopeful. So a coat of many colors, I trust that you understand, that is in conversation with the Joseph story. And in that story, the coat of many colors is that special garment that Jacob was preparing for one only of his sons, suggesting a preference, suggesting an individuality, a special love. By the way, originally in Torah, it doesn't say a coat of many colors, it says a striped coat, but a coat of many colors was mainly Broadway, I think. But anyway, we know what we are talking about. Racheli Moscovich is, I would say, an ultra-Orthodox woman, and yet a director of theater, mainly of women, for women, no mixed genders there. She's a mother, if I'm not mistaken, of 7 or 8 children, and she looks as great as she looked in the picture that I have showed you. Well taken care of, upright, beautiful, keeping her figure, whatever. I don't know what magic helps these women to do that, but it does. כותונת פרפסים רחלי מוסקוביץ'. בני חזר מהמערכה ותרמילו מתפקע מכל מה שלא אני ארזתי לו. גרביים שתרמה קהילה מארגנטינה, שמיכה משובצת בריח בית אחר, מגבת כחולה ממשפחה מהמושב, ציצית מירושלים, פליס מתנת חברת הייטק, צעיף שסרגה קשישה, גופיות שנקנו מקבוצת פייבוקס, סדין שנתן לו חבר, כפפות שקנו נערות, מעיל מארון של מישהו שבא וביקש לתת, פורסת את כל ההריגים ורוקמת כותונת פסים חדשה, ראה יוסף, ערבו לך אחיך. A coat of many colors. My son returned from battle, his duffel bursting with things that I had not packed for him. Socks donated by the Jews in Argentina, a kilted blanket smelling like someone else's home, a blue towel from a family from the Moshav, tzitzit from Jerusalem, a fleece jacket gifted by a high-tech company, a scarf knitted by an elderly lady, undershirts purchased by online shoppers, a sheet that was given to him by a friend, gloves bought by teenage girls, a jacket from the closet of someone who came and requested to give. I spread out all these garments and weave together a new coat of many colors. See, Yosef, your brothers were there for you. Let me step out again of our PowerPoint presentation to say the following. The story of Joseph is a story of one of the worst betrayals that can happen in human relations. Brothers wanting to kill their own brother, then by the persuasion of one of them, they don't kill him, they only sell him down to slavery to foreigners, and then they take that coat that was the cause of all the jealousy, of which there was only one, therefore it was so easily recognizable. They slaughter a kid goat, and then they dip the blood in it, come to their father, and tell him, your son Joseph was devoured. And they never fix the story. And they never tell the father that there is a chance that his son, their brother, might be alive. And then you know how the story develops. It's such a tragedy. It's such a basic, major transgression and sin that is very, very hard to set right. And indeed, it is said in our tradition that on Yom Kippur, what we actually plead for forgiveness for is that brotherly betrayal that needs never to be repeated. When I interviewed the poet, as I tried to speak to all of them before their poems got into the anthology, Racheli told me that she wanted to tell me something. Her son, one of the 7, was just studying the story in school, so that means to me that he is 7 years of age, or was at the time that this was created. Because kids study Genesis in 2nd grade for the first time. Being a child of a family of so many children, for him, brotherly connection is basic, is part of his life. And she told me he came home from school and he was devastated, asking his mother, but they were his brothers. How could they do that to him? And she tells me on that interview, I wrote this poem as a tikkun for my son. I wanted him to see how nowadays we all come together as brothers with the donations, with the gifts, with the support of the military. So this is how this poem was created. And let me now stop and see if there are any questions so far. I am willing, of course, to address them, or insights or comments. Please. And if I don't see anybody, then I will assume that I can continue.
Anita has one.
You do have a, yeah.
The line, socks donated by the Jews in Argentina really got me.
Uh-huh.
It's just, we all know what happened in Argentina. So the fact that they were still Jews and they have the connection to Israel. They're sponsored by an elderly lady. Is every connection here, I could go on, but the very, the connections here are very deep.
Yeah.
Very, very much, you know, things that would weave together a new code.
Yeah.
I think one of the pieces of this that I think is so powerful, especially because as we sit here now, 15, 16 months, after the initial days of October 7th, it brings you back to those first few weeks when we were all seeking here in America and, outside of Israel, what can we do, right? We felt so far away. We felt, what can we tangibly do? And I remember that there was, there were a number of, I was living in Hollywood at the time, and there was a congregation right in Aventura who immediately, like 2 or 3 days after, they sent out WhatsApp messages to as many people as they could. And we just needed somewhere to go, feel like we could use our hands to do something. And I'll never forget just showing up. We gathered as much stuff as we could, filled up a few carloads, and we went to the synagogue not knowing what to expect. And when I got there, it was so overwhelming and so emotional to see every inch of the synagogue with boxes, with hundreds of people, hundreds from everywhere, just carloads, blocks of cars with people bringing things to send over to Israel. And I remember in those first few weeks, they had chartered planes, and they were sending cargo planes over of
of the fleece coat and the socks and everything. Yeah.
Right. But it was one of those things that, like, for us being here and so far away physically, it was our way of touching our family there, whatever it was, however many socks you could throw into boxes, how many diapers. And I just remember looking at all the supplies, and that was the one place where I finally felt like I could get off the couch after being so devastated that I could finally rise up and go and do something. And so as I think about this, and when I was in Israel, looking at, at the big warehouses with everybody collecting and sending them out, and just the civic response, the civilian response of the country was so moving. And this last line really does resonate so beautifully, that your brothers were there for you, from so many different places, but then also what is still so empowering and so beautiful for me is the Israeli response for each other is just one of those things that still just is so emotionally powerful. And so this is what a beautiful just sort of way to even reminisce and remember, and also to know still.
And now take it back to the writing point. I understand your reaction to the real story, But now think about this. Let me show you the picture again so you get who Racheli Moscovich is. I will take you back to the initial slide so that you can see what I'm talking about. Look at her. She is the person, you know, on top of the slide. Here. You see her headgear? I mean, this is a very observant woman who has 7 or 8 children and who is saying to her 7-year-old, I, your mother, will rewrite Torah for you. I will create a story from your reality that shows you that brothers do care. And you are living it right now because your brother, your older brother, came back with the duffel from the military and it was about brothers caring. Okay? Because she is writing from the receiving point of view. You, Rabbi, are talking from the sending point of view. Yeah. But she is at the other end and she makes her son see that. And I think that in itself is something worth noticing. Let us try, and do one more. Okay. So, again, this one needs another kind of introduction. This poem called These Are the Names appeared on a Tuesday preceding the week when we're going to start reading the Parsha of Shmot, the beginning of the book of Exodus. Now, in my work with Michael and Heather, the translators, I normally try to send them the poems 2 weeks ahead of time so that they can translate, so that we can look at it, send it to the poet, get reactions, and only then use it. And all under the pressure of things happening now. But this was the week on which the Parsha of These Are the Names of the People of Israel was going to be read on Shabbat, and the poems appeared on Tuesday. And I sent it to the 2 translators saying, can you do it now? Because there will be rabbis out there among my connections. I have a mailing list of some 60 rabbis to whom I send stuff in a regular mode. Dan is part of it. And I said, rabbis will want to have it by Shabbat when the first chapter of Exodus is read. And they did it, and we sent it out by Thursday. And in many communities throughout North America, this was available last year when Parashat Shmot is being read, not so far from the time we are right now. So this is the original, this is the biblical. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family, Reuben, Shimon, etc. I'm not going to read Torah for you, but I wanted you to see it in front of your eyes. And now, at that time in Israel, these are the names of all the over 200 hostages. This is before even we start getting them back, right? Even the beginning. So wherever you go in the country, these are the names. And the biblical conversation is now, or the conversation with biblical text in modern poetry is again on a different level. On Torah, we read these are the names, but in our everyday life, in our demonstrations, in our caring, these are the names. And now we can look at the poem. And because of my concern about time, I'm going straight to the English. These are the names by Yael Lifshitz, and she does a motto. These are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt, Exodus 1:1. And these are the names of the children of Israel, 80 and another 6th night. You can date it exactly. It's day 86. We are now 527, I think, today. And these are the names of those covered by darkness. And these are the names of those descending to the abyss of grief, whose life were abducted and cut from their life. And these are the names of the children of Israel, whose cry rises from the depth of the tunnels of darkness. And there is no angel, no seraph to save them, not even a single expression of deliverance. But there is hope, with trembling wings, with the power to break out of the straits and call them by their names and draw them out to bring them back to the land of the living. Can you see how the conversation shifts away not only on that parsha, but actually starts a conversation with what is coming to us soon, and that's Pesach. So look at the line, and there is no angel and no seraph, and I'm taking you to the biblical lines. And I will pass through the land of Egypt. I am not an angel, and I will smite every firstborn. I am not a seraph, and with all the gods of Egypt, I will make judgment, etc. So direct conversation. If God committed then, where is he now? Where is the angel? Where is the seraph? Another line that is worth looking at. And there is not even a single language of deliverance. Rashi says there are 4 different terms used by God in describing the deliverance from Egypt, for it states in Exodus 6:6-7, and I will bring forth, and I shall deliver, and shall redeem, and I shall take out. And so our poet is asking, okay, back there were 4 expressions of deliverance. Can you do now, please, 1 at least, and bring them out? And then for conclusion, she goes to the line, draw them out. And there is the line of drawing Moses out of the water. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her son. She named him Moses, explaining, I drew him out of the water. The word Moshe suggests drawing out, limshot, out of the water. I think that this is a great moment for us to say a word about what is happening next. Because when next we meet, our 4th session is about poems in the wake of October 7th that may and can be included in your Seder reading this year. I have throughout the years collected Seder-related poetry in Israel. It did not start with October 7th, but it continues. And our 4th session will focus on that. So this is like sort of an introduction going in that way. We still have a couple of minutes. So if you have a question, a comment, anything you need for me to address, I am willing to do it now, or whatever works for you right now.
We want you to be able to get, oh, yeah, Pat, I think there's one.
It's okay, I'll be fine. I'm not that far away from the place.
Did you have, you're muted.
Please unmute, Beth.
Okay.
You're good now.
So I just wanted to mention, last week, I was struck very much by the teacher who said all these things that are coming into her space while she's trying to teach were very distracting. And I was in Israel as a volunteer, and I worked at the Angels. I forgot whose Angels it is, the big warehouse in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
So over there, people would just come and give us a list of what to give them, and we gave them the things, and they left and they went. And now I'm listening to the other side of it, that it really helps people who are giving as much as it distracted her. You can't fix everything all at one time.
Sure. And where she was working was not a warehouse. That was
No.
a space that was supposed to be as peaceful as possible for the children.
Yes,
And
but
but
that's what,
because of the abundance of giving, it could not be controlled at the beginning. You're absolutely right. And thank you for your comment and thank you for your volunteering. Anybody else, dear friends?
I think this poem epitomizes some of the sentiments of those of us outside of Israel felt. Because in the poem, it said, where is the deliverance? Where is the taking out? And we ask that question also of God, of decency of our fellow human beings around the world. Where is the outcry? Where is the salvation in all this horror? And it just left this void, this abyss, so to speak, because it was awaiting and unknowing, standing on the precipice of wanting hope, but not seeing it.
Yeah. And that's a very strong part of the poetry. And you could see poems where people ask where was God or where is the deliverance, and you could see a poem like Mom is Always Right where people ask where was the IDF. So you see both ends, the wanting and the praying for divine deliverance, and the critical voice of what was not functioning in our own society. Both coexist.
And
Yes,
of the
please.
outcry of the rest of the world against this.
Yeah, that's an additional voice. You're absolutely right, and thank you for that. Yeah,
I just
and
wanted
go ahead.
to close, getting back to that coat of many colors. I think what's very powerful about the poet's choices in this is it's a quiet poem, right? There's no, it's the objects are telling the stories or are the voice, and what gets chosen. I think just as a mother, to have a child return, this is a very different poem than the washing of the daughter that we learned last week.
She's creating post October 7th children's literature.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to learn or to be able to say, these things happened away from me. Like, this is the history of what happened beyond our home, and it's shown through objects. I think it's incredibly powerful, and it's what, like in the United States, we're so drawn to so many objects. We see they're telling stories like from a distance. So I think even though they're sharing the same house, there's a distance between the person experiencing this and a mother who's been waiting.
By the way, if you are so moved and you'd like to drop a note to the poet, email me and I'll give you her email, and you can write to her directly.
Oh, nice.
And I think she will enjoy it.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, toda rabba, and
So I'm
see
off to
you.
the demonstration. I trust speaking for you as well, calling for some peaceful negotiations and resolution of our issues that way. Thank you. Until we meet again next week.
Thank you.
Toda.
Thank you. Toda.
Mhm.
Hey, Ron, if you're there, if you could post that picture of the slide one more time, because I think we have some people who've come in since then. Okay, so I'm gonna have you do it again so that you can
we take a picture of it?
open your camera. You can do it.
Was this the same one as Thursday?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So just scan the QR by opening your camera, like you're gonna take it. No, I know, for some people who were here and came a little bit late. Yeah, you're gonna press this little yellow button and it's gonna take you to an online form.
It takes you to the show.
Oh, I got it.
There.
Takes you
Oh,
to the show.
it should, yes. And so you can just, hey girl, look at you. All right, and then you will just fill that information in, and so that way we can make sure that you're getting, restart it. It takes a little slow.
I
I
need
think
a
some
free
people
account,
want
I
that.
need an account.
I don't know if you need one or not.
I did it once. No, it's not open now.
How do you
What is
get-
this?
Oh, you're right. I think I did it
What did
already.
we get now?
What? And then you'll fill, I'm happy to help you.
No, I have to make an account.
I don't think you have to. I think you can just email it and we'll see if you have an account.
No, we all have it.
So,
It'll link it.
once you take a picture, what do you, what?
Don't take the picture, just don't take a picture, just put your camera in front of it.
I did.
I understand.
Yellow boxes.
Did you press the yellow box?
Yeah.
No, I think you took a picture, you just need to scan it again.
It's done.
It's my password.
I love it.
So no, the point is that you can.
You have to.
I just don't know, I'm not.
You
So
don't,
where, the yellow box?
it's gonna come up on the screen, like a little yellow rectangle is gonna come up on the screen.
It says sure cloud?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Press that and it'll take you to a form. For some reason, your internet is not loading. And for those of my friends on,
Doesn't look.
okay.
Not loading either.
Okay, I'll come right there for a second. For those of our friends online, if you want to just click the link in the chat, you'll be able to get to the form. This is just our way of being able to make sure that you're getting targeted emails with all the adult learning things that are coming up soon.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you all for joining us today.
You know that we have no show
See you
cloud.
next week.
Thank you. Yeah,
I have, yeah, I.
that would probably be the easiest.